Before I begin the homily, just a little news. The Archbishop has asked that we try to bring the cup back for communion. It's been 4 years since COVID, so we're a little rusty, but we're going to do that starting today. And yet there'll be limitations on that. Given the fact that we don't have that many Eucharistic ministers right now, we're only going to have 2 cups, and we're going to have them in the front, in either corner here. Partially, I hope I'm putting them there because I hope that people will sit in the front. But if you are in the back and you would like to receive the precious blood, just receive the host and then just come up the side aisle here, and so they might be coming from 2 directions to the cup. And we don't know how many people will at this point want to receive from the cup, so we might have too much or too little wine. We might run out early, but just keep flexible. We're in a sort of a transition mode here. So my usual routine is to go to vacation on the week after Easter. So this year I did. I went off to Indiana, where I have a classmate, a seminary classmate friend, Father Ted. And there's something new this time when I went, and that was he had gotten a new dog. Some of you remember Father Freitag's dogs. Well, this was bigger. So this is a 1-year-old puppy, but it was Bernie. Bernie's his name. And Bernie is theoretically a puppy, but he's a full-size poodle mix with a Bernese mountain dog. So he's big. He's a puppy, but he's gargantuan, he's furry, he's strong. And Ted told me that his trainer that he had hired, so Ted needed some help. So he had a professional dog trainer work with him. And the dog trainer said, I think, again, kind of euphemistically, that Bernie would be described as playful and strong-willed. Now, he's not malicious. So again, some dogs are mean. Bernie's not mean. He's just out of control. And he's prone to sudden attacks of playfully jumping on you, knocking your wind out, chewing on your extremities, not in a bad way. It's not like he's trying to hurt you. He just wants to chew. And so the trainer managed to get a few commands really solid in place. So Ted got this big mat, dog mat. He put it in the living room. And if Bernie gets out of control, which he does regularly, then Ted has a command. He firmly tells Bernie, place. And Bernie immediately jumps onto the mat. That's the theory. And he's pretty good, actually. When the trainer or when Ted says place, it's almost amusing. He gets kind of sheepish. He jumps back on like, I know I'm not supposed to be that. But he's so full of energy. So I learned from that, and I was sometimes left alone in the house with Bernie, watching TV or reading or things. And again, Bernie's just prone to lunge at you for no apparent reason. I'm just reading a book, and suddenly he's jumping on me. So that's when I learned, place. And I'm not the master or the trainer, but it works pretty well. It works pretty well. Quiet, be still. So Jesus treats the storm today, I think of it as treating a bad dog, right? He's saying place to the storm. And he's clearly in command. He's the master of the situation. The waters and the wind obey him. And I think this is important for us to think about, because if we think about this episode on the Sea of Galilee, I think it's going to be a model for our lives. This is what happens to us. Maybe not literally on this, on the sea, but we have storms in our lives, right? Big storms, small storms. And I was thinking of Bernie as a canine storm, right? When I was using that analogy, he's big, he's furry, all sorts of hair everywhere, and he just is all over. And so again, that's what sort of triggered me into thinking of this as an analogy. But there are storms in our lives, not just Bernie, the other bigger ones. And they break out suddenly or not so suddenly. It happens. Storms can arise in our family life, in our work. Something disastrous happening in my work, my health. I suddenly have this diagnosis or something suddenly changed, my marriage, my friendships, whatever. Storms brew up, and they feel very threatening. And sometimes we think, we're not going to make it. And I think that when we're in the middle of that storm, again, fear dominates. But again, I think of it as the plot of human stories, that we're always filled with these stormy lives. And I think theologically, you can think of this in the big picture. So what happens to us individually, the ups and downs, the storms, it's just an individual example of something that's basically the story of humanity. This is who we are. Thinking about the Bible, it begins in the garden. It's peace. It's paradise. It's calm. Then you go to the fall. Suddenly sin and death enter in, and it's chaos. It's bad. Storm brews. And then the whole plot of the Bible is the resolution through all the rest of the books is God coming to calm the storm of sin and death that we have brought upon ourselves. So again, it's creation, it's fall, it's redemption. That's what happened. And the actor here, the one who's driving this for us, is Christ as creator and redeemer. That's why we have this worshiping of Christ. He's our creator and our redeemer. He gives us calm and peace, and he restores it when the storm comes. This plays out in our own lives in many ways. I mean, this is the human storytelling plot. I mean, how many times in classical stories, short stories, long stories, novels, and films, you have a sitcom. Everybody knows the situation of a sitcom. It's a couple, it's a family, it's something. In each episode, a storm comes up. And then it gets solved in a half hour. But that's what sort of expect. There's the plot. A musical. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets back together with girl. That's a very common Broadway plot. Because that's humanity. That's what we do. Creation, fall, redemption. I was thinking in terms of this gospel, for the sake of our peace and calm, we need to trust in God to believe that this flow, that there is an end of the storm, that God can calm the storm in our lives. And we can have that trust because we're not alone in the boat. Sometimes we feel alone in our boat. I'm all alone in life. I'm in the midst of this chaos, and I'm isolated. That's the feeling. That was the feeling of the apostles in the storm. We're lost. And I think in terms of this, one of my favorite devotions, Catholic devotions, is the Divine Mercy Chaplet, Divine Mercy devotion, where Jesus, back about almost literally 100 years ago, appeared to this Polish nun, St. Faustina, and you probably have seen, many of you, the picture of the Divine Mercy image, but Jesus also said, not only paint this image, but on the bottom of it say, always write, Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I trust in you. It's a prayer that we should all be constantly praying in the middle of life's storms. As with me and Bernie, I'm not the master. And so sometimes when we pray this prayer, the storm may not resolve instantaneously. Place. Quiet. Be still. Jesus, I trust in you. They're all doing the same thing. They're calming the storm. And when we're tempted to panic and thinking, this can't work, remember, and also I feel bad because I'm not trusting. Just remember, first of all, that in that storm, the boat was filled with fishermen. They knew the water. They were sailors. And in the midst of all that, still, they were afraid. So it's human to feel that to some extent, right? That the storm's coming. What's going to happen to me? But while we might be afraid of this in the storm, trust. Trust is, sometimes we think trust is a feeling. Trust is not a feeling. Trust is a choice. I'm putting myself in your hands, Jesus. I know you're in the boat, and because you're in the boat, I'm going to turn to you. I'm going to trust you. Trust is not a feeling. It's a choice. And I'm going to trust that this boat doesn't get overthrown. that the boat won't sink. So we just know that Jesus remains quietly asleep in our boat. Sometimes we feel him, sometimes he seems awake, sometimes he seems asleep, right? But remember, one of his names is Emmanuel, which means God is with us. And faith gives us this ability to trust that the waters can't swamp the boat when he's there. And remember the apostles, at the end of this experience, they asked, who then is this whom even the wind and the sea obey? Who is this? And the lesson to take away from this, I think, is simply, who is he? Jesus is the master. And the stormy sea is his pet. That's the relationship. So when we ask Jesus, I trust in you, it's not like this is a battle between equals. Jesus versus whatever's over here in your life. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's people, maybe it's a situation, maybe it's who knows what it is. Jesus is the master. This is the pet. Maybe a good pet, maybe a bad pet. But he's the master. And a word from him, he can make any storm cease, snap back into place. Jesus, I trust in you. He commands, remember, quiet, be still, place.